this is championship or bust, and this is a team that's all in on competing. Welcome to Begley's Mailbag. I'm SNY's NBA insider Ian Begley, and we are here to answer your questions about the Knicks, Nets, and the NBA as we kick off Season 4 of Begley's Mailbag. Let's get started. Got a question here from Robert Cross. Robert wants to know, do you feel that Mitchell Robinson's in the Knicks' plans this year, or are they not counting on him due to his injury status? Well, look, the Knicks have said that they expect Robinson back sometime December, January, but that's dependent on how the rehab continues to go here. I would think, just a guess, looking at the landscape here and looking at how, Robinson has been hurt these past few years, I would think that the Knicks take a look at how their centers function here over the first couple weeks of the season. Take a look at how Karl Towns looks defensively at center, and look at how you have Jericho Sims, you have Precious Achiuwa. Look at what you have behind Towns and see how those centers function, maybe even an Errol Hukporti. If things go well, maybe they wait for Mitchell Robinson to come back because they feel like they can hold things down until he returns early next year. But if not, if they're struggling, I could see them pulling a trigger on a trade to get an experienced center in here, because this team is in win-now mode. You can't afford to have stretches where you're shorthanded and losing games. And so I could see them being aggressive there if there are struggles at the center positions early on and looking to move Robinson. But it's a hard deal to make, right? Because teams aren't sure of Robinson's health. They don't know, just like the Knicks don't know exactly when he'll be back and what that'll look like. So tricky trade to make Robinson on a very good contract. But I think what you have to do in this situation is keep an eye on how these centers play early on this season for the Knicks. I think that will point you in a certain direction with regard to the future of Mitchell Robinson. My buddy the Cooler checks in with a question about Gersson Rosas, and he wants to know, how much input do you think Gersson had in the Cat trade, considering he was recently the head of the T-Wolves front office? And my understanding was Rosas was, making a lot of calls on this. And I think he was heavily active in how this thing ultimately went down. I think that he, was, I don't want to say point person, I don't want to misstate anything, but I know he was one of the executives that was on the phone a lot about this particular trade. And obviously, the cap gymnastics that took place for the Knicks to get the deal done. Brock Aller, I believe, spearheaded that effort. But I think as far as, calls day in and day out and staying kind of in tune with where things were with a potential Julius Randle trade, I do think Rosas was on that. And you see the end result here, and then we'll see how things play out on the floor. Towns obviously looking pretty good in the preseason. And look, the Knicks are all in. And this trade was them going all in. So everything that happens from here on out will be about getting you closer to win a championship and compete with the top teams in the East. And the Towns trade, obviously, they put all their chips on the table once they made that move. Got a question from Own Him Brunson. Will the Knicks continue to be active in the trade market even after all the moves they made in the offseason? I think that you have to look at see how the group functions, right? First few weeks of the season, first month of the season. If the group is functioning well and it's clear that, they're competent on both sides of the ball, could see the Knicks standing pat and continuing with the group that they have. But, if there's struggles on the defensive side of the ball, particularly off the bench, if there are either scoring or defensive issues, backup center issues, I assume they would be aggressive in the trade market and seeing what's out there. They don't have many assets to trade. They have a ton of second-round picks to move. You got for contracts, you got Mitchell Robinson's deal, obviously. The issue with Robinson in the trade market is teams don't know probably enough about his health, so you'd be taking a little bit of a leap of faith there if you're a team trading for Robinson. But I think the Knicks, they would have to be aggressive if things aren't going well the first few weeks, 6 weeks of the year, because this is championship or bust, and this is a team that's all in on competing with the elite teams in the NBA. So, you can't afford to be weak in an area off your bench and think you're going to go ahead and compete with the Bostons and try to win an NBA title. So yeah, I do think they would be aggressive in that scenario. Got one from Dylan Backer, and this one's on Tyler Kolek. Does Kolek have a chance to make the rotation? What's the latest on who the backup guard will be? You know, pre-Julius Randle trade, when Dante DiVincenzo was on this roster, you know, it was my understanding that neither Payne nor Kolek were going to be a part of the regular rotation, right? And actually coming out of Summer League, you know, Kolek, in some coaches' eyes, was ahead of Payne in that rotation, but neither of them would have been in the regular rotation, so it was kind of irrelevant. But after the Randle trade, after DiVincenzo goes, the thinking changed a little bit there, and Cam Payne, a veteran, was put ahead of Kolek in that rotation, in the thinking about the rotation. But so I think if you go into the regular season, I think you're going to see Cam Payne as the backup point guard. Will Kolek get minutes? You know, let's see what happens with the Landry Shamet injury. Let's see what happens with his spot. Do they come in and bring somebody in who can go in, step into the rotation in the way Shamet would have been? I think that factors into what happens with Kolek. But nonetheless, Kolek has had a really strong preseason in these games, and we know that the coaching staff liked him coming out of Summer League. So I think it all bodes well for Kolek, whether he gets minutes in the rotation this year off the bat or not. He has shown himself to be somebody who has a future here in New York. Leaf Shinobi, great question here about Mitchell Robinson, Karl-Anthony Towns. If Mitch comes back, is he the starting center, and does Towns move to the 4? Now, all the talk and the messaging from the Knicks after the Towns trade was that, hey, we had a need at center, and we filled this need at center with one of the best centers in the league. So we feel really good about that. And based on that, I think the Knicks, view Towns as a center. It's not even worth me asking Tom Thibodeau the question about what is he going to do when Mitchell Robinson comes back. I know he's not going to say anything. It's been a topic that's on my mind, but I'm not going to waste my time and Thibodeau's time by asking him about it. He's not going to go there. I would imagine, though, again, if the team is playing well with Towns at center, if that starting 5 is functioning well, there's no need to tweak things. Mitchell Robinson, if he's healthy, back, and still on the Knicks, would be the backup center. But if the Knicks are struggling and they need to make a change with that starting 5, if they're not defending well in particular, yeah, sure, I could see Robinson sliding in there in the role that kind of Rudy Gobert had next to Towns in Minnesota, which there's evidence that it can work because it worked well in Minnesota last year. Obviously, different personnel, different situations, but you saw that Towns could function very well next to a defensive center in Gobert, so you could assume that you'd have similar results with Robinson if everybody's healthy. So yeah, I wouldn't rule it out, but again, so much of this is about what happens early on, first month, first 6 weeks of the season. I think that's when teams kind of assess who they are, where they are, and when you get into, mid-December, that's when trade season starts, and then it's when you really start to hear more about conversations and what teams' plans are. But I would just keep an eye on how things go early this season. When you think about Robinson, will he be traded? Will he be on the roster? Is he going to start at center? A lot of those answers will come as we watch these games once the season kicks off here in a few days. Question from Mike Reese. With Landry Shamet likely injured and out for a while, what will they do with his spot on the bench? Yeah, look, TJ Warren is healthy and he's right there. He signed an Exhibit 9 deal with them to come to training camp. He played in that recent win over Charlotte. He's a veteran, so I would assume that he's under consideration. I think there was some internal consideration of Marcus Morris Sr. even before this Shamet injury as somebody they might bring in season. I don't know if they'll go that route because, with Shamet, he's a shooter, and the Knicks have a big void to fill if Shamet is indeed out for an extended period there with that shoulder injury as of this filming. We're not sure of the exact diagnosis, but it didn't look good. It seemed like he'd be out for at least several weeks. But they could also keep Shamet and decide that they're going to let him rehab and keep him under contract, keep him on the roster. But that would be, having a very short bench if you chose to keep Shamet. So Knicks have a tough decision here. I'm sure TJ Warren will get some consideration. Maybe they'll look for external options, but a big void to fill with Landry Shamet's injury. That'll do it for this edition of Begley's Mailbag on SNY.TV, but please keep those questions coming because we're excited about Season 4 here. Looking forward to talking to you guys about the Knicks, Nets, and the NBA in what should be a very exciting season here in New York.